Introduction to Cross-Disciplinary Practitioners. Gao Xingyu, the cultivation genius of Zuxing, failed during the Golden Elixir Cataclysm and was dragged by fate to the Earth Realm, parallel world. The Earth Realm is in the end of the Dharma era, and the four essential conditions for practicing the Dharma, Earth, and wealth couples have left only 1.5 of Gao Xingyu with a backward cultivation. Let's see how he relies on the Earth Realm, seeks opportunities, excavates ancient relics, ventures into different realms, leads a group of companions to fight against heaven, earth, and humans, and continues to forge ahead on the path of cultivation. Chapter 1. Survival from Disaster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the parallel world of the Earth, deep in the Qinling Mountains, there is a Kea ridge named after its appearance resembling a sleeping bird. The surroundings of Kea ridge are continuous and steep mountains, covered with dense vegetation. The nearby terrain is complex, with steep mountains and no roads, making walking extremely difficult. There are also a large number of wild animals living here, including some fierce beasts. Not only are there common black bears and large herds of wild boars in the Qinling Mountains, but there are also rare species such as pythons, leopards, and jackals. All these factors make the area around Kea Ridge rarely visited by people. It's just that there are occasional daredevil gatherers appearing here. Risks and opportunities coexist. Not only in Kea Ridge, there are also many valuable wild medicinal herbs in the surrounding mountains and canyons that can last for years. As long as the herb picker can survive, it can basically guarantee that the whole family will no longer worry about money within 3 to 5 years. On this day, the sky over Kea Ridge was originally clear for thousands of miles, but suddenly it was shrouded in rolling black clouds from unknown sources. For a moment, the black clouds turned the ink, the silver snake danced wildly, and the thunderous roar shook like the end of the world. But not far away, the sun is still bright and the wind is gentle, just like two worlds with Kea Ridge. All animals tremble under such immense power, running frantically towards their surroundings, completely ignoring the presence of their natural enemies. The birds were also powerless to fly high, only able to scatter and escape at the height of the tree tops. The silver light in the sky became increasingly dense, occasionally flashing a hint of gold. The sound of thunderbolts became increasingly loud and piercing through the clouds. At this moment, if someone could be present and slow down 1,000 times to observe the lightning over Kea Ridge, they would find that these lightning bolts were not hitting the ground, but concentrated on a point in mid-air. Around this point, silver lightning bolts gathered together, overlapping into gold, creating a dense yet distinct interweaving of gold and silver in the sky. Suddenly, the lightning in the sky seemed to pause for a moment, and the thunderous sound in the sky disappeared in an instant. Following closely, countless golden lightning bolts appeared almost simultaneously from all directions, hitting the point in mid-air in unison. A vortex of indescribable color suddenly appeared at the center of the lightning, and a towering pressure emanated from it. The animals attempting to stay away from Kea Ridge almost simultaneously sank and were all crushed to the ground, even birds flapping their wings desperately in the low air were no exception. A figure appeared from the vortex, wrapped in residual golden lightning around it, like a golden cocoon, falling directly onto the Kea Ridge and rolling into the valley. At the same time as the vortex appeared, all the plants within the range shrouded in dark clouds suddenly swelled and surged, and the newly grown branches were instantly covered with lush branches and leaves. Animals that cannot leave this range, especially those small insects, expand their bodies like balloons and then explode and die. Their splashing flesh and blood blend into the soil, making the land more fertile. As the figure fell, the vortex disappeared as if it had never appeared before. Subsequently, the lightning in the air also disappeared, and the rolling black clouds faded in my breath and quickly dissipated. Only a cluster of objects burned into charcoal by lightning remained in the valley. A day later, a slight moan emanated from this charred coal mass. After a long time, the charcoal ball moved gently, and after a while, it moved again. Gao Xingyu, who woke up from his self-sealing, knew that he was in big trouble this time. Who could have imagined that he was just crossing a small heavenly calamity with a pill, but he was thrown into the vortex of space by his own calamity thunder, and now he doesn't even know where he has fallen. Others are all facing triple thunder, 6 thunder, and the legendary 9 thunder. But what he faced was a constant barrage of thunder. After forcibly crossing the unknown 56th or 57th path of the thunderstorm, Gao Xingyu had almost lost any defensive means. The only thing that could support him was the firm belief of the cultivator who fought against the heavens and the earth, never giving up. As the power of the thunderbolt grew stronger and even broke through the spatial barriers around him, creating a spatial vortex, Gao Xingyu resolutely took advantage of the impact of the thunderbolt and threw himself into it. The Great Road is 50, and the heavens extend 4 or 9. People escape one of them. Perhaps this is the only glimmer of vitality left by the heavenly way for him. After enduring so many tribulations, Gao Xingyu had already exhausted all the tribulation items and elixirs he had prepared, and his body was completely empty, leaving his thick true element completely wiped out. Helpless, as Gao Xingyu rushed into the vortex of space, he could only spray a drop of blood essence and seal his body and breath with a secret technique. His last thought before self-sealing was, "Is this the disaster that my master said I was destined for?" Gao Xingyu is now unable to see or speak, and even his thoughts seem to be unable to move. He only had the little finger of his left hand up and down, barely able to move. Gao Xingyu remained calm and focused on his body with the slowly recovering spiritual consciousness from the sea of consciousness. It was only then that he realized that his physical condition was even worse than he had imagined. Under the pressure of the spatial vortex, Gao Xingyu's painstakingly tortured body was as broken as a sack, with broken meridians and even bones crushed. Thanks to Gao Xingyu's certain spatial attributes, otherwise, the young cultivator who has just completed alchemy would not only be able to bolt out after entering the spatial vortex, but even those who approached the spatial vortex would be crushed into minced meat. This is not the biggest problem that Gao Xingyu is facing. In his empty elixir field, the newly formed golden pill had already shattered when dealing with the calamity thunder. Now, only a faint spot of light is left, which is faintly visible. If it weren't for his exceptionally keen consciousness, he would probably not have noticed it. Gao Xingyu wanted to cry without tears. How could he recover and continue his cultivation in the future? After building the foundation, the true element in the practitioner's body will become liquid, and when the pill is completed, the true element will exist in an almost solid form. And what is the current situation with the light spot? Gao Xingyu really doesn't know what will happen in the elixir field if he continues to cultivate. As for the carbonization of the body's epidermis by lightning, causing the 5 senses to temporarily lose their function, this is not a problem. After the body is repaired, it will naturally recover. Although Gao Xingyu is not purely a practitioner of physical cultivation, he is a practitioner of both spiritual and physical cultivation. I still have a lot of experience on how to repair my body. It's just a matter of grinding with some painstaking effort, inch by inch polishing. Who made him feel like there's hardly any good space left all over his body, inside and outside. Practitioners are very dull in their practice, with countless simple repetitions just to achieve qualitative change from quantitative change. If you don't even have this patience, why bother talking about cultivation? Chapter 2. Decision on Taking Elements. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Apart from the chaotic Dantian, Gao Xingyu's sea of consciousness has also been damaged, which is the big trouble. Because cultivators in the Golden Elixir period have no ability to repair the damage of the sea, they can only wait for it to slowly recover on its own. The damage to the practitioner's sea of consciousness can lead to a series of problems. For example, the recovery of divine soul power will become exceptionally slow, unable to finally control the power of divine souls, unable to cast most spells, unable to release divine consciousness, unable to observe the outside world in a subtle way, and unable to open one's own storage ring. In addition, there is an important question, which is what kind of environment is around Gao Xingyu now and whether it is dangerous. He has no idea at all. He, who was devastated by the looting thunder, was unable to release his divine sense, and his facial features and physical senses were temporarily disabled. This made Gao Xingyu blind and deaf, unable to understand the situation around him. Gao Xingyu secretly complained in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. If there is any danger at this time, he can only passively bear it, using his own body, or in other words, the charred flesh on the surface, to resist. It's no use thinking too much now. Gao Xingyu started to save himself. While waiting for his spiritual consciousness to recover, he worked hard to absorb the surrounding energy and began the major project of repairing his physical body. But what the hell is this place? The vitality between heaven and earth is also too sparse. How long will it take him to recover? Gao Xingyu choked without words, and could only complain crazily in his heart. Gao Xingyu was unaware that the earth realm he is currently in is the last Dharma plane. If it weren't for the faint energy escaping from the vortex of space and being absorbed by the surrounding plants, he wouldn't even be able to sense this energy. Gao Xingyu comes from his ancestral star and is different from ordinary people at birth. He has a broad understanding of the sea and powerful divine soul power. However, due to his insufficient physical support, Gao Xingyu often felt headaches and a splitting sensation from the age of 3, which brought great pain to his childhood. Later, Gao Xingyu's master appeared, took him as his disciple, and helped him seal most of the sea of consciousness and divine soul power, so that Gao Xingyu could practice normally like ordinary people. Gao Xingyu has been practicing with his master since childhood, learning extremely rare ancient cultivation methods rather than popular cultivation methods, and his foundation is exceptionally solid. After his master left, Gao Xingyu practiced alone. With his amazing cultivation talent, he used less than 50 years to form the Golden Elixir, and his cultivation speed and real strength far exceeded others. However, just as he was crossing the Dan Little Heavenly Calamity, an accident occurred and he eventually fell into the earth realm through a spatial vortex. Gao Xingyu was not in a hurry to use the absorbed energy in his body to repair his body, but instead accumulated some and carefully analyzed these energies. He was pleasantly surprised to find that these elemental energies were accompanied by wood, soil, and water attributes, with wood accounting for the majority. Moreover, among these wood attributes, there is a faint aura of life, which is the most effective for the recovery of Gao Xingyu. Based on his senses, Gao Xingyu identified the main direction of the source of this aura, and then began to operate the capture yuan decision, fully absorbing the energy in this direction. Shuyuan Ju is a small technique for extracting gas from a space, which is a practical technique for practitioners to collect the breath of unknown objects or organisms without direct contact, for analyzing and understanding their characteristics. Later on, after minor improvements, the Shuyuan Ju was widely used in alchemy, becoming an important auxiliary means for alchemists to analyze the properties of medicine and master the heat when opening the furnace for alchemy. Gao Xingyu followed his master and learned a lot of miscellaneous things related to cultivation, including alchemy. Therefore, he is very proficient in using the element-taking technique. Shuyuan Ju is a technique that requires a high level of realm, but does not require much true element or divine soul power. That is to say, as long as you reach your level and understand this technique, it will be very easy to use. Therefore, it seems appropriate for Gao Xingyu to use the Shuyuan Ju in this situation. But on the other hand, this is also one of the few means he can use now. A 3-thread golden ribbon grows less than 3 meters away from the Gao's humanoid charcoal cluster. This is a precious traditional Chinese medicine unique to the Qinling Mountains, which has the miraculous effect of promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis, and its efficacy is much stronger than that of ordinary golden ribbons. This 3-thread golden ribbon has been around for decades and has just received nourishment from its vitality. Originally, the 3-thread golden ribbon grew close to the ground, but now it is over half a person tall and thriving. Half a day later, this 3-thread golden ribbon had withered its head and drooped its head, no longer in its previous state. And Gao Xingyu's left hand could barely move slightly. At this point, Gao Xingyu has already finished his work and is slowly regulating his breath and nourishing his mind. Although it greatly helps his recovery to absorb the vitality with vitality, such as the 3-thread golden ribbon, through the use of the element capturing technique, he cannot do too much and should stop at a moderate level. Otherwise, this would become a magic technique, which would have a significant negative impact on his foundation. Gao Xingyu discovered another problem, as he used his own life essence and blood to seal himself, causing significant physical damage. At this point, he had already begun to feel hungry. You should know that since he successfully built his foundation 30 years ago, Yu has basically opened up a valley and can only drink some spiritual tea and wine on a daily basis. Every 2 or 3 months, he would make some spiritual food and a tooth ritual by himself. This spiritual food is not a snack for ordinary people. It is a dish made mainly of various spiritual beasts or medicines, containing a large amount of vitality, and is used to assist cultivators in their cultivation. Some experts who are good at making spiritual food can even use clever combinations of various ingredients to produce certain attributes or medicinal properties, further enhancing their auxiliary cultivation effect. When Gao Xingyu was a child, he had a wide range of interests and followed a knowledgeable and talented master who doted on him. Naturally, he also learned how to make spiritual food, but he was not proficient in it. Practitioners who want to learn things are actually very simple. As long as they have a solid understanding of the sea and strong spiritual power, they can directly use their divine sense to scan the jade slips and replicate a large amount of knowledge in their minds. Jade slips are not omnipotent, as there are many specific secrets that cannot be printed on them. Moreover, even if practitioners replicate knowledge from jade slips, there is still a distance from the application level, and practitioners can only use this knowledge reasonably after truly comprehending it. After reaching the stage of refining qi and cultivating spiritual consciousness, cultivators can make their own jade slips. Jade slips are just a unified title, mostly in the form of various jade slips and plaques, which are convenient for unified collection and long-term preservation. But there are also some important information that require special means of inheritance. In this case, cultivators can use the bones, skins, or special plants of certain exotic beasts to store specific information. The opening method will also be much more complex, and its security and inheritance will undoubtedly be revealed. When reaching a certain level, cultivators can use the power of their divine soul to directly transmit certain knowledge, techniques, or information on point 1 to others, also known as the divine soul imprint. Chapter 3. Wang Jinxiong Snake. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. This method of soul imprinting is much stronger than jade slips, because it can convey the caster's own insights to the recipient, which is equivalent to allowing the other party to personally experience it. However, this method requires a high level of cultivation for the caster, and places a great burden on the recipient's sea of consciousness and divine soul. It is possible that it will explode the recipient's sea of consciousness or deplete the power of the divine soul. Therefore, although the method of divine soul imprinting is highly famous, it is like a legendary transaction that few people have truly experienced in the circles of middle and low-level cultivators. Of course, there are also soul-searching techniques in similar spells, which have the opposite effect to the divine soul imprint. The caster uses their own divine soul power to forcibly open the recipient's sea of consciousness and directly search for the desired information from their memory. The prerequisite for using this spell is that the caster's divine soul power far exceeds that of the victim. However, this spell inevitably causes great damage to the victim's consciousness, leading to amnesia, mental disorder, and even death. Moreover, it is said that such means go against the harmony of heaven and are not allowed by the heavenly way. Using soul-searching techniques more often, the caster will attract stronger thunder when crossing the tribulation. So, even those who are extremely self-reliant in their actions and are generous with everything else, are easily unwilling to use this technique. Wu Hongzi, the teacher of Gao Xingyu, is very interesting. He records the basic martial arts technique Hunyuan Zhenling Lu, as well as various techniques and cultivation knowledge he knows, as well as various rumors, anecdotes in different jade slips. Wu Hongzhi handed over these jade slips to Gao Xingyu, allowing him to study them freely. But each jade slip was heavily sealed by Wu Hongzhi, and only when Gao Xingyu met certain preset conditions would the seal be lifted layer by layer. Wu Hongzhi taught Gao Xingyu in this way, which can be considered well-intentioned. He is fully capable of imparting various knowledge to Gao Xingyu through the imprint of divine souls, and he also knows that Gao Xingyu's sea of consciousness and divine soul power can be tolerated. However, cultivation is a very personalized thing, and everyone's feelings and insights are not the same. If Gao Xingyu wants to go further in the future, he must have his own experience and walk his own path. So, even if some knowledge is not important and can be directly imparted to Gao Xingyu, Wu Hongzhi would rather go to great lengths to make it into graded jade slips, in order to cultivate Gao Xingyu's good cultivation habits from a young age. The valley of Kaya Ridge is actually a relatively wide mountain gap, with a small area and no large animals inside. The one who dominates here is a nest of king brocade snakes. There are a total of 6 or 7 of them, big and small, and their prey is various small animals such as birds, mice, and rabbits here. Before the appearance of the spatial vortex, they also felt danger, but like many slow-moving animals, their family did not have time to escape, but chose to hide deep underground. The danger did not arise, on the contrary, when the spatial vortex appeared, the heavenly energy descended. These Wang-Jin snakes rely on their instincts to desperately absorb their energy, resulting in all but one male snake exploding and dying. This male snake has just completed molting and has a relatively soft body. Although its body was cracked multiple times due to the vitality falling from the sky, and it was covered in snake blood, it managed to survive. The body of a male snake, which was originally over 3 meters long, has now more than doubled, almost 8 meters long. Its strength has greatly increased, perhaps even large rocks cannot resist it using all its body strength to wrap around. However, under the stimulation of the vitality of heaven and earth, Wang Jinshi underwent such a huge change in a short period of time, which also came at a certain cost. The only thought left of this fruitful male snake now is to swallow everything it can, because at this moment, its stomach is empty and it is too hungry. In the snake's den, the just a few Wang-Jin snakes that were stretched out have all been eaten by it. Don't be alarmed. When there is a shortage of food, it devours its own kind, which is already the lifestyle of the king snake. However, the energy in those flesh and blood is not enough to fill the consumption in the male snake's body, and it needs more flesh and blood to replenish itself. As the vitality of heaven and earth enters the body, the wisdom of this king's golden snake has also been slightly improved. It knows that there are not many animals in the valley, and in order to satisfy its appetite, it can only leave the valley and go outside to hunt. Do whatever you say. Wang Jinxiong, who was so hungry that he couldn't bear it, was originally a local hegemon. At this time, his strength had greatly increased, so he didn't hesitate to leave his snake den and swim outside the valley. As he was swimming, Wang Jinxiong's snake suddenly smelled a faint scent of qi and blood. The taste of this silk is so fresh and sweet, yet full of energy, even more attractive than the same kind of flesh and blood that it has just swallowed with vitality. Wang Jinxiong, the snake, stopped and found the source of this trace of qi and blood with his not outstanding vision, which came from a black charcoal ball next to him with a burning smell. Unfortunately, it's a bit small. Wang Jinxiong's snake was somewhat disappointed. Compared to his current nearly 8-meter-long body, Yu reading book www.yuyukangshu.net, this charcoal ball can only be considered an appetizer. Wang Jinxiong opened his big mouth and swallowed the charcoal ball in a few bites, then continued to move towards the outside of the valley. Gao Xingyu just opened a gap in the carbon layer outside his left hand, revealing the newly formed tender flesh inside. Because when he was practicing just now, he felt that the layer of coke wrapped around his body greatly reduced his ability to absorb energy. Due to the carbonization of his epidermis by lightning, the newly formed tender flesh beneath the epidermis has not yet had the ability to lock in its own breath. It was through this gap that his breath leaked out. Gao Xingyu did not realize how pure his breath was as a former cultivator of the Golden Core period. As a result, a hungry big guy was attracted and Gao Xingyu was swallowed up. Through the gap in his left hand, Gao Xingyu can make direct contact with the outside world through his physical body, which is much clearer than just being separated by the carbon layer. He suddenly realized that there had been a huge change in the surrounding atmosphere, and the woody aura had almost disappeared, but there was an increase in the power of qi and blood. These qi and blood powers have extremely low quality and are extremely mottled, and there is a violent aura in them. Wild beasts. No, such a chaotic and weak aura is at most a savage beast. Gao Xingyu made a judgment in his heart. Cultivators have strict regulations on the classification of animal levels. Ordinary beasts are the lowest level, and unless there are special circumstances, they will not pose much threat to cultivators. On top of ordinary beasts are savage beasts, which can use their instincts to strengthen themselves by utilizing the energy of heaven and earth. Corresponding to it are innate martial artists or cultivators during the qi-nourishing period. The wild beast is one level higher, and a demon pill has already formed in its body, which can be cultivated and evolved independently. Corresponding to the wild beast is the cultivator during the foundation building period. Chapter 4. Mutated Wild Boar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Above the wild beasts, they can all be called demon beasts. Monsters not only have the ability to cultivate independently, but also awaken bloodline inheritance, open spiritual orifices, and possess certain wisdom. A normal monster corresponds to a cultivator in the Golden Elixir period. More advanced monsters can now transform and appear to be no different from human cultivators on the surface. They correspond to cultivators above the primordial stage. According to the level division of the cultivation world, cultivators below the foundation period are considered beginners, cultivators during the foundation period and the Golden Elixir period are considered intermediate, cultivators during the primordial infant period and above are considered major cultivators, and the corresponding beasts are also considered as such. The cultivation world has strict levels, and each level represents a different level of life, so the difference in strength is very obvious. Gao Xingyu is a cultivator who is similar to a cultivator in the early stages of cultivation. Due to the fact that cultivators engage in both spiritual and physical cultivation, their cultivation speed is slightly slower than that of cultivators, but their strength is much stronger. However, the consumption of cultivation resources is also astonishing. After reaching the middle stage of cultivation, the difference between the two gradually becomes apparent, and cultivators will embark on another path of cultivation. Normally, Gao Xingyu doesn't even look up to wild beasts like Wang Jinxiong's snake. Even before he formed the pill, he wouldn't have any interest in Wang Jinxiong's snake, which could only be considered the lowest level beast. However, the current situation is somewhat different. Gao Xingyu, who was physically disabled and determined, knew in his heart that since he had fallen into a different world, if he could not recover as soon as possible and face everything unknown in his best condition, it would be his greatest irresponsibility. Although the level of blood power of King Kumsheng's snake is low, it can form essence of blood after purification, which has the most direct effect for Gao Xingyu to repair his body. Therefore, Gao Xingyu couldn't be picky anymore, and the camera element was once again activated to start repairing his body. Shortly after leaving the valley, Wang Jinxiong's snake suddenly slowed down its speed. It feels like it loses control when its qi and blood flow reaches the middle part of its body, unable to use its strength. This feeling made it very uncomfortable, so it used its body to wrap around a big tree that was embraced by two people next to it, mobilizing the energy and blood of its whole body, and forcefully strangled it. The big tree snapped in response, and Wang Jinxiong's snake also felt that his body's qi and blood circulation had become smoother, making his body much more comfortable. So it advanced all the way, and when it felt uncomfortable, it looked for a nearby big tree or boulder to roll around, like a roller, and opened up a winding road several meters wide in the forest. Gao Xingyu is working quite hard at this time. The gap on his left hand greatly increases his absorption speed, and most of his energy is focused on purifying and absorbing the energy and blood. The qi and blood power of Wang Jinxiong's snake may seem sufficient, but its quality is not high and some are not suitable for use. The only advantage is that it has a large volume and a full tube. Gao Xingyu needs to be purified for many times, and incorporate the coagulated blood essence into his body to repair himself. Fortunately, he was in the belly of the Wang Jinxiong snake at this moment, surrounded by the power of the snake's qi and blood. Like a meal delivered to his mouth, without even lifting his hand, he could simply open his mouth and swallow it. The rolling power of qi and blood was quickly absorbed into Gao Xingyu's body through the gap in his hand, as if it were substance. However, the power of life and blood only ran for a few circles in his body, and then was discharged again. The essence that could really remain in his body, in terms of quantity, did not exist in 100. Wang Jinxiong's snake just felt numb because Gao Xingyu quickly absorbed it, causing the rapid loss of qi and blood in its chest and abdomen. But as Wang Jinxiong's snake exerted full body strength, it increased its own speed of qi and blood movement. At the same time, Gao Xingyu also discharged unnecessary qi and blood power, filling some gaps. Therefore, the discomfort inside Wang Jinxiong's snake's body slowed down a lot, turning into a dull knife cutting meat. At this point, it has been a long time since the appearance of the spatial vortex, and the animals that have just been scared away by the threat of heaven and earth have basically returned to their original positions. Most types of animals have strong territorial awareness. After the crisis, except for the unlucky ghosts who were killed by natural enemies on the way, the rest went back to their respective homes. The northern foothills of Kaya Ridge are steep, while the southern foothills are relatively gentle. Therefore, more animals live on the southern foothills of Kaya Ridge. Especially for those large animals, the northern foothills do not have enough space for them to survive. The valley where Wang Jinxiong's snake is located is at the northern foot, so after it leaves the valley, it heads straight to the southern foot to prepare for hunting. Given its current large size, it will be difficult to obtain sufficient food if it continues to stay at the northern foothills. Wang Jinxiong's snake walked forward and encountered an animal with no long eyes, so it naturally swallowed it without hesitation. However, it is no longer interested in small animals like mice, and hunting them is not enough to make up for its wasted energy. Its current prey mainly includes forest elk, muntjac, antelope, pig badger, etc. It also ate a small black bear that was separated from the mother bear. However, there is a Gao Xingyu in its belly who is absorbing essence, so it only feels hungry and weak, so it has to speed up its own hunting speed. At this moment, a loud hum suddenly came from ahead, accompanied by the sound of a fallen tree. Wang Jinxiong's snake couldn't help but slow down and cautiously moved forward. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Wang Jinxiong's snake poked its head out from behind a tree and found a large open space in front of it. The tree that had originally grown here was lying on the ground in all directions, with a huge wild boar in the middle. This pure black wild boar was also stimulated by its vitality, causing it to mutate and its body size to skyrocket. Now it is over 1 person tall, with a body length of over 3 meters. Its body is thick and sturdy, with 2 huge fangs exposed at the corners of its mouth. It is half a meter long, shining with a cold light and extremely sharp. Wild boars are omnivorous animals and are located at the southern foot of the food-rich Kaya Ridge, so they have already passed the weakened period of evolution through feeding. The remains of several black bears and antelopes next to the empty field are enough to prove the formidable combat power of this wild boar at this time. Behind the wild boar is the mountain wall, where there is a large hole that appears to be the boar's nest. It ran to a big tree next to the empty field to scratch, but after a few scratches, the tree couldn't bear it and fell to the ground with a loud bang. The wild boar snorted discontentedly and continued to search for other trees to scratch. It seems that this open space was formed in this way. As soon as Wang Jinxiong's snake passed by, the wild boar had already smelled it through its developed sense of smell. It raised its hair and let out a piercing cry, challenging Wang Jinxiong's snake. To be honest, Wang Jinxiong's snake really doesn't want to go to war with this mutated wild boar now. In theory, Wang Jinxi is not afraid of wild boars. Under normal circumstances, the outcome of a battle between the two sides is 6-4, and in terms of strength, Wang Jinxi actually has an advantage. Although it knows that swallowing the flesh and blood of this mutated wild boar will make it stronger, it is still in a weak stage and may not be able to win steadily in battle. The most crucial thing is that although the Wang Jinxiong snake has evolved, it still cannot divide its food. What is it trying to do with such a huge wild boar? Chapter 5. Endless Combat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. More importantly, this mutated wild boar is too robust. Although Wang Jinxiong's snake has evolved and increased in size due to the stimulation of its vitality, it still cannot swallow this wild boar. Therefore, such a battle is almost meaningless for Wang Jinxiong's snake. Even if it kills this mutated wild boar, it cannot swallow it and can only waste its strength in vain. As for grabbing territory, that's even more ridiculous. Snake-like Yin, after preparing a full meal, Wang Jinxiong went back to his old nest at the northern foot to sleep for a few months. Who wants to bask in the sun here like a pig? The mutated wild boar ignored it and continued to scream, challenging Wang Jinxiong's snake. It is originally a commodity that runs through its entire intestines, fighting against the heavens, the earth, and the air. Even though its vitality has evolved into its body, it is still a complete secondary commodity. Wang Jinxiong, who was forced to fight, reluctantly coiled his body and formed a snake formation. It stood up with its upper body, its snake head aimed at the wild boar, and fixed its gaze firmly on it with a cold gaze. The letter in Wang Jinxiong's snake mouth kept swallowing and making a hissing sound. The mutated wild boar doesn't have much patience. It lowered its head, kicked its two hind legs backwards with force, and then let out a howl before charging towards the Wang Jinxiong snake. Gao Xingyu was still puzzled in the snake's belly and didn't know what kind of wild beast it was. I absorbed your energy and blood like this. You didn't resist, but instead stirred up your energy and blood, accelerating your movement speed. Is this because I'm afraid I won't be able to eat enough? At this moment, outside, the battle between pigs and snakes has already begun. Although the wild boar may seem imposing, it is not actually a match for Wang Jinxiong's snake. Wild boars rely on their rough skin and thick flesh, combined with thick mud all over their bodies, and are not too afraid of slender venomous snakes. No matter how powerful a venomous snake is, if it cannot bite its flesh, it is useless. On the contrary, it is because venomous snakes are petite in size, and wild boars can cause fatal damage to them whether they trample on them with their feet or bite them directly. And wild boars themselves are omnivores with a good appetite, so they have the option of venomous snakes in their diet. But wild boars are no match for huge snakes like pythons and pythons. Unless the wild boar uses its sprint and inertia to thrust its fangs into the opponent's vital area, its trampling and biting will not have much effect. And the entanglement of pythons can strangle wild boars. At this moment, the mutated wild boar is trying to kill the Wang Jinxiong snake in front of him by sprinting. Unfortunately, the speed of Wang Jinxiong's snake's small-scale movement is even faster than that of the mutated wild boar. It only used its body's left and right movements to break free from the lock of the wild boar and skillfully dodged this sprint. When it comes to the wild boar's temperament, it's really stubborn. Although not a match for Wang Jinxiong's snake, he insisted on competing with it. The wild boar that ran overturned its body, howled a few times, and then charged over with its head down. Wang Jinxiong's snake is really helpless. It just passed by and had no intention of fighting or killing this wild boar. Due to hunger, any living thing now has only the difference between food and non-food in its eyes. Unfortunately, this wild boar is too large for the Wang Jinxiong snake to swallow, so it is not on the Wang Jinxiong snake's menu. Since that's the case, what's the point of getting hands on? Watching the mutated wild boar sprint in vain time and time again, the sadness in Wang Jinxiong's snake's heart flowed back into a river. What are you doing if you're so thick and sturdy? Forget it, it's really unreasonable to be such a second-class person. Since the wild boar was entangled and hindered his eating, Wang Jinxiong's snake was also annoyed and decided to put in some effort to send the wild boar on the road. After dodging the mutated wild boar for another sprint, the snake Wang Jinxiong did not dodge its body as before. Instead, at the moment when the wild boar passed by its side, it quickly extended its tail, tripped the mutated wild boar to the ground, and then pressed its body against it, entangled it in circles. Gao Xingyu was working hard to repair his body when he suddenly felt a strong pressure on his body, and at the same time, the energy and blood around him also surged. What is this savage beast doing? Can't we just be honest for a while? Gao Xingyu was very helpless. Now he couldn't move and could only passively bear it. However, this degree of compression still had certain benefits for him. The focal layer on his body surface began to peel off extensively under the combined action of Wang Jinxiong's snake stomach fluid and compression, and the newly formed tender meat's ability to absorb qi and blood became stronger and stronger. Wang Jinxiong's snake once again felt the same feeling of losing control of qi and blood as before. However, it is currently trying its best to entangle the mutated wild boar, preparing to strangle it in one go. How can it pay attention to its own problems? So at this moment, Wang Jinxiong's snake can only take advantage of the opportunity to entangle the mutated wild boar with his body and exert force, stirring up his whole body's qi and blood to resist this annoying feeling of losing control that snakes dislike. The mutated wild boar was also unwilling to let go. Although its body was tightly entangled by the Wang Jinxiong snake, making it lose its two most threatening attack methods of sprinting and fangs, it kept kicking on the snake's body with its only hoof that was not wrapped by the Wang Jinxiong snake. As Wang Jinxiong's snake continued to exert force, the mutated wild boar could no longer breathe, and its bones were being strangled to a crunching sound. Yu reading www.yuuxiangshu.net. Similarly unable to breathe, there is Gao Xingyu in the snake's belly. Due to damage to his mouth and nose, Gao Xingyu has been using the fetal breath method to obtain the necessary oxygen through his body. This is also one of the important differences between innate experts and ordinary warriors. Innate experts can use the fetal rest method for a long time, even in water. Living for a few days is not a problem. However, if the time is any longer, innate experts will also be drowned. They are more or less human than fish. Now, after wrapping his body around the mutated wild boar, Wang Jinxiong's snake constantly exerts pressure, which also leads to a sharp compression of the space in the snake's belly. The fetal rest method has also become a cooking pot without rice, so it is impossible to directly extract oxygen from the snake's stomach wall. Gao Xingyu also discovered this problem, and he can only continue to increase his absorption of qi and blood, to some extent, to get some supplement from it. At this point, Gao Xingyu had realized that he might have been swallowed by some giant animal. As the carbides on his skin continued to peel off, more and more of his skin came into contact with the snake's gastric juice. These gastric juices do not have a corrosive effect on the Jindan level cultivators of spiritual and physical dual cultivation, but the newly born skin is relatively tender and can make them feel a slight stinging pain. Gao Xingyu now hopes to quickly recover his left arm to perform some basic movements. Once restored, it's just a savage beast that can break free at any time. However, although the snake's stomach is full of energy and blood, it still takes time for Gao Xingyu to purify the essence. At this point, the battle of snakes and pigs outside has reached its most critical moment. Wang Jinxiong exerted all his strength to tighten his tight body, while the mutated wild boar was already gasping for breath, only exhaling but not inhaling. But this tremendous force is also squeezing Gao Xingyu's body, affecting his recovery speed. Chapter 6. Leading Stars to Lead Spiritual Resolutions. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The struggle of the mutated wild boar became increasingly powerless. Suddenly, its only exposed hoof shook and drew a mysterious arc in the air, lightly stepping on the body of the Wang Jinxiong snake. Wang Jinxiong was kicked more than 10 times by a wild boar on the snake just now, but he did not suffer any damage. Although this move may seem insignificant now, its power is significant. The Wang Jinxiong snake originally tightly wrapped around the body of the wild boar, emitting an uncontrollable and violent tremor. Almost all of its bones and joints were forcibly shaken off by this unstoppable tremor. After receiving this blow, Wang Jinxiong's snake was no longer able to support its body, like a puddle of rotten meat lying on the ground. Not to mention continuing to entangle the wild boar, even the snake head that has been standing tall has drooped. However, the mutated wild boar did not take the opportunity to escape or counterattack. After emitting this astonishing dying blow, it immediately ran out of fuel and died. If Gao Xingyu had seen this scene, he would have noticed that the mutated wild boar had a bloodline divine power similar to that of a monster-level wild boar. Earth-shaking, but its power was much weaker. At most, this mutated wild boar has just crossed the threshold of a savage beast, and is inferior to Wang Jinxiong's snake. However, at the last moment of its life, it unleashed a bloodline divine power that only demon beasts could use, even if it was just a castration version. The consequence of using supernatural powers beyond one's level is naturally the backlash of supernatural powers. Moreover, these two goods are closely intertwined with Wang Jinxiong's snake, and, shaking the ground, is a kind of fluctuation, but it does not distinguish between the enemy and us. When the mutated wild boar strikes, the waves will propagate back to the boar itself along the contact surface between the two. This fluctuation ignores the thick outer skin of the wild boar and directly affects its body. And the bones of wild boars are not as loose as those of snakes. Therefore, if it doesn't die, there is no natural reason. The bloodline supernatural ability of shaking the ground really fits the setting of a wild boar as a second-rate commodity. Once you go crazy and even kill yourself, you will be asked if you are afraid or not. At the same time, Gao Xingyu in the snake's belly also bears this blow. However, the physical strength and resilience of cultivators are much higher than those of mutated wild boars and Wang Jinxiong snakes. Gao Xingyu, who has repaired himself with the essence of Wang Jinxiong's life, can use this wave to force his life, and half of his body can make simple actions. Gao Xingyu, who had partially recovered his mobility, pointed his left hand like a knife and easily sliced open the snake's belly with just one click, slowly crawling out of it. At this moment, Wang Jinxiong's snake could not be described as living or dying, with severe abdominal pain. However, due to joint detachment, it was unable to control its body and could not even roll on the ground. It can only make a hissing sound while slowly wriggling its body to connect the detached joints. Seeing the sun again, Gao Xingyu ignored it and sat cross-legged on his own, with his 5 hearts facing the sky, ready to absorb his energy and fully heal his injuries. Bitter. Gao Xingyu, who had just applied his skills, let out a mournful cry. Is this the legendary last Dharma plane? How can one heal and cultivate such a thin energy that is almost catching up with the forbidden Yuan formation? Now Gao Xingyu is injured all over the body, and the physical injury can also be replenished by absorbing essence from animals with abundant vitality like Kungsheng Wang, or eating meat directly. But now it seems that the vitality in the body can only be transported and gradually accumulated through one's own qi and blood. Gao Xingyu felt very tired. If he wanted to accumulate the vitality in his body to the level before he formed the pill, relying solely on his body to naturally recover, his lifespan would probably not be able to wait for that day. However, Gao Xingyu did not give up easily. He looked at his left little finger and continued silently to use his energy to heal his injuries. On the little finger of Gao Xingyu's left hand, he wore a simple yet inconspicuous ring. This is the storage ring given to him by his master. Wu Hongzi, the master of Gao Xingyu, is a famous tycoon in the circle of Zuxing cultivators. He has a profound knowledge of Taoism and only has one disciple, Gao Xingyu, who is very precious. Therefore, Gao Xingyu has never been concerned about cultivation resources. The storage ring was filled with a large amount of cultivation resources prepared by Wu Hongzi for Gao Xingyu before his departure, including elemental stones, talismans, array plates, magic treasures, various elixirs, rare materials, and miscellaneous jade slips of martial arts. It can be said that there was everything. Even daily necessities such as linggu, lingjiu, lingru, and lingcha are stored in the storage ring. Now, Gao Xingyu's ring is quite empty, and a small calamity has greatly shrunk his waste bag. Especially the magic weapons, defensive formations, and talismans have been exhausted, and the pills for quick healing and replenishing true energy have also been used up. However, even so, the remaining resources in the ring were enough for him to overcome the difficulties in front of him. Unfortunately, Gao Xingyu's sea of consciousness was also severely injured, and his divine consciousness could not leave his body. Therefore, he looked at the storage ring but could not open it, and could only sigh helplessly. The most common practice for cultivators is to use various storage devices, including storage rings, in addition to storage spaces and storage symbols. Yuyu reading www.yuyukangshu.net. The storage space is designed for the cultivator family or sect, and needs to be opened up by high-level cultivators. The space is large and can accommodate living creatures, but the daily maintenance cost is relatively high and cannot be moved. Storage symbols are typical low-end products, with limited usage and limited space, generally not exceeding 10 cubic meters. They cannot accommodate items containing a large amount of vitality and are also easily opened by high-level cultivators. But the biggest advantage of storage symbols is that they have extremely low costs and do not require divine control. They can be used with their own vitality. Therefore, the storage talisman is widely used by low-level cultivators in the ancestral star who have not yet developed divine consciousness. Among some cultivators who have developed divine consciousness but have limited resources, there are also many who continue to use the storage talisman. Gao Xingyu possesses spatial attributes, and after successfully building the foundation, he can create his own storage talisman. Unfortunately, he has never taken the low-end item of storage symbols seriously, and there is no inventory around him. Otherwise, he could have solved his problem now. What if there is no vitality? Then we can only replace it with other energy. At this point, the benefits of being invincible are demonstrated. In addition to majoring in the martial arts, Hunyuan Junling Lu, Gao Xingyu learned a lot from his master. At that time, Gao Xingyu was just for fun, but now he has come in handy. At this time, it was already late, and Gao Xingyu was calm and focused. He had a thought in his heart, spreading his consciousness into the starry sky above his head, avoiding the Taiyin star, moon, and guiding the starlight into his body to heal his injuries. This cultivation method is called star leading spirit technique, which is not common in the cultivation world. It is mostly done by alchemists when adding attributes to the items they are refining. No one would do this during normal cultivation or healing. Surrounded by strong vitality, doesn't it smell good? Who would bother to attract that faint starlight into the body? Chapter 7. Strange Breath. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, the star-leading spirit decision was just right for Gao Xingyu at this time and place. Although Gao Xingyu said he has learned this skill, he has not seriously practiced it. However, when his cultivation level reached its limit, there was no interference from the surrounding energy, so he quickly entered a state and began to cultivate with peace of mind under the invisible starlight. The next morning, Gao Xingyu, who had been practicing with crossed knees and closed his eyes all night, suddenly opened his eyes. He faced the rising red sun, took a long breath, swallowed the first ray of sun-purple energy and jade in one gulp, and quickly ran a big circle in his body. This ray of sun-purple was fused with the starlight accumulated in his body all night, forming a harmonious trend between heaven and earth, which stimulated the essence of qi and blood deposited in his body. In just this moment, Gao Xingyu's physical injury had already healed by half, and a faint layer of radiance appeared on his skin, but it remained unbroken and improved compared to before. Unfortunately, the star-pulling spirit technique has a good effect on physical cultivation, but for the help of divine consciousness, it can only be said to be better than nothing, and it still needs to be slowly honed. Gao Xingyu let out a long sigh and exhaled the turbid qi from his body. He turned his head, with a flash of divine light in his eyes, and looked at the nearby Wang Jinxiong snake. After all, it was an evolved beast. After one night, the wound on Wang Jinxiong's snake's abdomen almost completely healed. It reconnects its detached joints through continuous peristalsis. However, Gao Xingyu was working on one side, and a faint pressure intimidated him to the point where he dared not make any major moves or leave, and could only wait on the side. At this moment, Gao Xingyu looked over and Wang Jinxiong, the snake, rushed to the ground with his head, indicating wholehearted submission. Gao Xingyu smiled. He felt that he was predestined by this big snake. If he hadn't absorbed a lot of its essence of life to repair his body, he might not be able to move now. Since this big snake represents submission, it indicates that it also has a trace of intelligence. Gao Xingyu didn't take it too seriously and decided to release it. He opened his eyes and scanned Wang Jinxiong's snake. Wang Jinxiong's snake is in a very poor state at this time, with a huge loss of qi and blood. If he doesn't replenish it, he may not even be able to maintain his level as a beginner beast and will drop out. Gao Xingyu looked at the body of the mutated wild boar not far away, thought for a moment, and then stood up and walked over. Gao Xingyu first broke off the two fangs from the wild boar's mouth. The fangs of mutated wild boars are hard and sharp, making them a good material. At this moment, Gao Xingyu was unarmed and decided to use these two fangs as temporary tools. Gao Xingyu exerted his arms and used his fangs to divide the wild boar into several pieces. Then he pointed to the Wang Jinxiong snake with his fingers, and then pointed to these pieces of meat before leaving with his fangs. After Wang Jinxiong and Gao Xingyu left, they quickly stepped forward and began to eat. Wang Jinxiong was already hungry. Before he had enough food, Gao Xingyu sucked away a lot of essence of his life, and finally he was ripped open. But for his solid foundation, he would have died. The mutated wild boar's body is too large for Wang Jinxiong's snake to swallow, so Gao Xingyu intervened to separate it. In fact, the flesh and blood of mutated wild boars contain trace amounts of vitality, which is also useful for Gao Xingyu. However, the wild boar had already died all night without bleeding. After some consideration, Gao Xingyu decided to feed the snake and settle the previous cause and effect. 2 years later, under the Kea Ridge. On the open space next to the pool, Gao Xingyu, covered in fur, was grilling fish by the campfire. It has been 2 years since he arrived at this plain, and Gao Xingyu has been devoted to healing his wounds and has not yet come into contact with humans. However, he already knew that there were humans present on this plain, as he had seen several artificial aircraft flying overhead. In the past 2 years, Gao Xingyu has traveled all over Kea Ridge, leaving his footprints on almost all the surrounding mountains. He found many medicinal herbs that were suitable for him, and his physical injuries had already healed. He also improved his physical body to a certain extent through the cultivation of medicinal baths and star-pulling spiritual techniques. However, the accumulated vitality in his body is less than 1,000th of his peak, and the injury of Shihai has hardly made any progress, which makes him very headache. After completing a period of physical cultivation, it's time to go out for a walk and look for opportunities. Gao Xingyu was calculating in his heart, but at the same time, he was not idle and sprinkled several spices on the grilled fish. These spices he found around him, although almost devoid of vitality, tasted good when used for grilled fish and meat. However, he couldn't find any salt, and he couldn't extract the salt from the rocks, so he had to make do with it. Due to the fragmentation of the golden elixir and insufficient vitality in the body, Gao Xingyu is unable to maintain Pigu and needs to eat daily to achieve it. Fortunately, his physical body is significantly different from that of ordinary people, and even without salt, it would not have a significant impact. I have returned to the innate realm from the golden elixir period, which is considered an unparalleled thing in the cultivation world. Gao Xingyu smiled bitterly in his heart and couldn't help but self-deprecate. Gao Xingyu looked at the fish being baked and felt that the heat was almost done. He was not afraid of being scalded, so he threw a large fish weighing about 10 pounds behind him with his hand. The big head of Wang Jinxiong's snake suddenly appeared, and Yu reading www.yuyukangshu.net bit the big fish in one bite and then swallowed it. The body of Wang Jinxiong's snake has shrunk by 1 circle compared to a year ago, and now it is only 5 or 6 meters long, which is also much slimmer. However, its spirit and spirit are now full, and its movements have become much more agile. After eating the mutated wild boar and filling the gap in his body, Wang Jinxiong went back to his nest at the northern foot to sleep. It can last for 2 to 3 months on a full meal, so most of the time it hides in its nest. However, every time it comes out to hunt, it must send a portion of its prey to Gao Xingyu. Since it has become a subordinate, it must pay protection fees. Gao Xingyu didn't take its things for nothing. Every time he would give it a gift, either a suitable medicine or a grilled meat. In short, there was interaction and it was a win-win situation. This is actually the Tao that Gao Xingyu and his family will pursue throughout their lives. Equality is a prerequisite, and even if the target is non-human, even if the target is a submissive younger brother, they will still persist in doing so. After eating grilled fish, Wang Jinxiong nodded and bowed to Gao Xingyu. And then left. A 10-pound roasted fish is just filling the teeth of Wang Jinxiong's snake. Gao Xingyu wouldn't really feed it with grilled fish or meat, who is their little brother after all. Gao Xingyu ignored the departing Wang Jinxiong's snake and slowly ate a smaller fish in his hand. Thinking that he will soon go out and interact with others, Gao Xingyu still feels a bit uncomfortable. He has been practicing with his master in secret realms since he was young. When it comes to cultivation, he is undoubtedly a top genius, but in terms of interpersonal relationships and worldly wisdom, it is not his strong suit. A few months later, Gao Xingyu was practicing when he suddenly noticed that Wang Jinxiong's snake had come again. Gao Xingyu felt a bit strange. Normally, it was time for it to return to its nest and sleep, so why did it run to the southern foothills again? Chapter 8. Condensing Breath Formation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gao Xingyu's temporary residence is located at the southern foot of Kaya Ridge. It was a cave he dug on the mountain wall with wild boar fangs, not too far from the cave where the mutated wild boar used to live. Wang Jinxiong's snake approached Gao Xingyu with a hissing sound, but unfortunately, Gao Xingyu couldn't understand what it meant. However, there was a strange smell on Wang Jinxiong's snake, which aroused Gao Xingyu's curiosity. He pondered for a while, then shook his body and stood on top of Wang Jinxiong's snake, waving his hand and saying, "Take me to take a look." This kind of game, one person, one snake, has also been played before. Gao Xingyu took a breath and his body floated lightly. After the evolution of Wang Jinxiong's snake, its strength was infinite, and it didn't care about this weight at all. So it carried Gao Xingyu and rushed towards the north foot. "Is this going to your lair?" Standing on the snake's body, Gao Xingyu discovered that the direction in which Wang Jinxiong's snake was advancing was where its lair was located. The road on this side of the northern foothills is not easy to walk. Gao Xingyu achieved innate success. Although he jumped like flying and saw cliffs as a smooth path, he was able to fly for a short time. However, he only came to the northern foothills once, when he was searching for medicine to treat his injuries. As for the nest of Wang Jinxiong's snake, Gao Xingyu did not even enter it. What a joke! The snake's den is cold, damp, and has a foul odor. Even if there is any output in this place, it will never be suitable for normal humans. Since that's the case, Gao Xingyu is not willing to go drilling in play. The nest of Wang Jinxiong's snake is a natural cave, which is its new home. After evolution, it has a large body. The original nest was too small to live in, so it has been relocated. Fortunately, although the new snake cave is cold and humid, it is relatively spacious and the odor is not as strong, which makes Gao Xingyu feel much better. But here, the faint aura that Gao Xingyu had just sensed from Wang Jinxiong's snake was even more pronounced. Gao Xingyu quickly confirmed that this aura came from deep inside the snake's cave. This aura is very strange, although there is only a hint of conversation, it is powerful and majestic, completely different from the familiar vitality taste of Gao Xingyu. The snake's den is very deep, and the deeper it goes, the darker it becomes. Fortunately, Gao Xingyu's physical cultivation has been completed, and his 5 senses and 6 senses are very sensitive. Physical cultivation divides physical cultivation into 5 steps. Gao Xingyu has reached the triple realm of copper skin, iron bones, and steel bars. If he passes through the dual realms of silver marrow and gold blood, his physical body can be fully developed. Therefore, although Gao Xingyu's body was lacking in vitality and his spiritual consciousness could not be used at this time, he was far more intelligent than ordinary people. With the help of the little phosphorescence inside the snake cave, Gao Xingyu's line of sight was not greatly affected. A crack opened on the stone wall deep in the snake's den, and this strange aura came from inside. There were large areas of snake molting below the crack. Gao Xingyu walked forward to observe carefully, only to find a passage behind the stone wall that was more than 1 person tall but not too wide, extending diagonally downwards. The passage twists and turns, inside it is dark and endless. Gao Xingyu estimated that it was Wang Jinxiong's body swaying while the snake was molting, causing him to collide randomly on the stone wall. And behind the stone wall was empty, unable to resist the strange power of Wang Jinxiong's snake, so the cracked passage of the stone wall exposed itself. So, is this passage artificially hidden? Gao Xingyu carefully looked at this stone wall again. Sure enough, there was a separate boulder blocking the entrance of the passage. However, over time, the giant stones and surrounding soil mixed together, making it almost indistinguishable. Gao Xingyu turned around and saw Wang Jinxiong's snake, the coward, trembling in the distance. Gao Xingyu was too lazy to pay attention to it. He waved his palm a few times and completely pushed the giant stone away, followed closely by him and jumped into the passage. At this point, Gao Xingyu has switched to the fetal breathing method, and even if there is insufficient oxygen in the channel, it will not affect his movements. However, the passage is constantly high and low, and Gao Xingyu needs to occasionally lower his head to avoid it, which makes walking uncomfortable. The passage has always been sloping downwards, with a considerable slope, and the passage is also constantly turning with the mountain terrain. Gao Xingyu was not slow, walking for about 10 minutes, and it was estimated that there was a drop of over a kilometer from the snake cave. As Gao Xingyu continued to deepen, the special aura inside became stronger and stronger. Turning a few more corners, his eyes lit up, and a green and translucent light film appeared at the end of the passage. As the secret was about to be revealed, Gao Xingyu remained calm and stopped, carefully observing the situation before him. It is said to be a film of light, but it is not visible to the naked eye of ordinary people. As a former cultivator of the Golden Elixir, Gao Xingyu is accustomed to releasing his divine sense when observing the environment, and injecting his energy into his eyes and ears to enhance his divine sense. But in his current state, not to mention his divine sense, he doesn't even have much energy. So he can only inject internal energy into his eyes and ears like an ordinary innate expert, to strengthen his vision and hearing as much as possible. Although both internal strength and vitality are energy, they are fundamentally different. Who let Gao Xingyu's injury not heal? He can only do this to the greatest extent. Is this the gathering breath formation? Gao Xingyu squatted outside the light film, and after using some small techniques to explore, he realized that this was just a restrained breathing formation, but a basic formation that was about to collapse. Because the strange aura that made Gao Xingyu feel was leaking out of the formation at a certain rhythm. Although the frequency of leaks is extremely slow, this trend indicates that this formation cannot be sustained quickly. Gao Xingyu has all 5 elements. According to the requirements of most popular cultivation techniques in Zuxing, he is not suitable for cultivation. Most cultivation techniques are most suitable for practitioners with dual spiritual roots or one master and 2 sets of 3 spiritual roots. As for the single spiritual root, it is simply a proud son of the emperor, and it is difficult to find one among billions of people. For any sect, it is something that can be encountered but not sought after. Fortunately, his master Wu Hongzi taught him the method of cultivation. The method of cultivation emphasizes balanced development, so balancing the 5 elements is the best choice. If a cultivator has a clear distinction between the strengths and weaknesses of the 5 elements, and even lacks 1 or 2 elements, the sect will have to work hard to make up for them before continuing to cultivate. Gao Xingyu's 5 elements balance is the best candidate for cultivation. Therefore, since his cultivation, he has had a smooth journey and only took 50 years to form the Golden Elixir. Unfortunately, he did not survive the small calamity and was brought to a final plane by the spatial vortex, so everything had to start from scratch. Most cultivators will simultaneously cultivate 1 or 2 life professions based on their actual situation while practicing, such as alchemy, refining tools, spiritual plants, etc. This not only allows one to earn cultivation resources for oneself, but also allows for similar experiences during part-time work, further understanding one's own martial arts and various rules. The cultivation environment on the ancestral planet is very good, and the various professions of practitioners have formed a system and permeated into various aspects of society. Chapter 9. Xianxia and Lingxia. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Like many core successors of major sects, Gao Xingyu has received very systematic training since childhood. They have almost been exposed to all life professions, but in terms of familiarity, they only understand. Only by selecting 1 or 2 that are most suitable for themselves can they seriously study them. The 5 elements of Gao Xingyu are balanced, and the power of divine souls far exceeds that of ordinary people, so the chosen life professions are talismans and array mages. Talismans are the condensation of spells, while formation rules are the evolution of celestial phenomena. These 2 knowledge will merge into one at the intermediate and advanced stages, forming a prohibition, which is one of the great paths between heaven and earth. Because it is the avenue of heaven and earth, both of these knowledge are vast and vast. Although Gao Xingyu is intelligent, his study time is still short, so he can only be said to have a rough understanding. Especially in formations, there are a wide variety of types. Masters pay attention to adapting formations to local conditions, so even if they use the same formation, they can undergo countless transformations. Gao Xingyu is a minor cultivator who hasn't even reached the Golden Elixir. He has only just started learning formations, learned some basic formation theories, and witnessed some of the most basic, commonly used formations and their transformations. Now this is the ectopia, Earth's realm, and the theoretical source of the formation may not necessarily be the same as the ancestral star. Therefore, judging the formation becomes even more difficult. Fortunately, Gao Xingyu's formation inheritance is quite high. End. He eliminated appearances and started with basic elements. Through careful analysis and simple testing, he determined that this formation is a restrained breathing formation. The function of the gathering breath formation is only to control certain special sound, light, taste, or energy fluctuations within a certain range, so as not to let them leak out. Therefore, the gathering breath formation does not possess aggressiveness. Seeking wealth insurance. Since Gao Xingyu has already arrived here, he will naturally not give up his efforts to explore the truth. Although he didn't know what was going on inside, the aura emanating from it was positive but not evil, possibly nurtured by a strange object from heaven and earth. Although various signs indicate that cultivators had already intervened before Gao Xingyu arrived, what appeared in front of Gao Xingyu was only a breath-blocking formation, not a defensive or warning formation that blocked people from entering, let alone a fantasy, maze, or killing formation. Therefore, Gao Xingyu gritted his teeth and decided to go in and take a look. Gao Xingyu released the vine tied around his waist and held a mutated wild boar fang in his hand, which was carried behind him. He calmed down and quickly ran his internal breathing for a small week. After preparing everything, he firmly stepped into the light film. Gao Xingyu, who had just entered the range of the restrained breathing array, took a small sideslip and dodged his body to one side, while lowering his center of gravity. His fangs were held in his hand like a short spear, ready to adapt at any time. At the same time, Gao Xingyu's vision was fully open, and he quickly observed the situation inside the convergence breathing array. This is not a very large stalactite cave, but it is very high. 20 to 30 stalactites, big and small, hang down from the cave, and under the reflection of dark green light, it looks somewhat grim. On the ground not far from Gao Xingyu, there is a humanoid figure sitting cross-legged with its back to the entrance of the passage. Not far from the side of the figure, there is a large gray-white carnivorous insect lying on the ground. The insect's head has been split open, and there is also a layer of shell behind it, which looks extremely ugly. The burrowing beetle. Gao Xingyu was surprised. The ugly bug in front of him was very similar to a strange insect. The mirage beetle. That Gao Xingyu saw from the jade slips prepared by his master. The burrowing beetle is a type of animal that lives underground and dies at the sight of light, never appearing on the ground for life. Therefore, apart from some miners, almost few people have seen them. Apart from Wu Hongzi's jade slips, Gao Xingyu has never heard anyone talk about this animal. The name of the mirage beetle contains the word mirage, naturally because it has the ability to cause hallucinations in mirage-like animals, and because the mirage beetle lives underground for a long time, its body carries yin poison. Although the toxicity of this yin poison is not very strong, it is also a deadly toxin that can corrode the yin's soft elemental energy. Therefore, once poisoned, unless one is practicing a fire attribute technique, the more negative the elemental energy is used to resist, the more passive it becomes. The hallucinogenic ability of the mirage beetle, combined with its yin poison, has a tremendous killing power on low-level cultivators, causing them to slowly poison and die when deeply trapped in the illusion. Gao Xingyu is a practitioner who cultivates both spirit and body. If willing, the true element in the body can be converted into a positive internal force at any time, so there is no fear of burrowing beetles. However, before Gao Xingyu could take any action, the sitting figure and the cave mirage beetle had already turned into powder with the weathering he brought when he entered the breathing formation. Even the hard shell of the cave mirage beetle was no exception. Gao Xingyu was startled. This must be a relic from tens of thousands of years ago, even the hard shell had been dusty. However, as a wave passed by, Gao Xingyu realized that it might not take too long. This wave was enough to crush the body from the inside without damaging its appearance. Although both the unknown cultivator and the mirage beetle turned into dust, there were still some things that were not crushed but preserved. A earthy yellow storage bag, a jade slip, and a three-legged tripod in front of the cultivator, the size of 2 adult fists, are all the relics of this unknown cultivator. The fluctuations within the convergence breath formation come from the front, with a 1-foot square array covering about 20 cubic meters of space. The edge of the formation is also a layer of light film, emitting a darker green fluorescence. It is easy for Gao Xingyu to distinguish that this array is also a low-level convergence array, just like the external convergence array. However, the area of the array is smaller, and the effect of breathing is stronger. When using the convergence breath formation, it is designed for shielding and naturally does not actively emit sound, light, or waves. As for the reason for the green fluorescence on the light film of these 2 convergence arrays, discs, Gao Xingyu also thought of it. Most likely, it was because the arranger used would attribute spirit stones as the driving force of the array. A place with sufficient vitality will form a vein of elemental stones, which will be mined and uniformly cut to form the standard elemental stones used by cultivators. Xianxia itself is fully attributed, also known as having no attributes. On the contrary, spirit stones with a single attribute will be produced in extreme environments. Due to the single attribute of spirit stones, cultivators on the ancestral planet do not care about them and only occasionally use them when specific single attribute energy is needed. Using elemental stones can also achieve single attribute output, which can be easily achieved through attribute conversion on the formation, but it is just a bit wasteful. In this ancestral cultivation world, cultivators like Gao Xingyu, who have abundant cultivation resources, usually use elemental stones directly. They are too lazy to carry and use single attribute spiritual stones. However, this Earth realm is in an era of non-magic, and the possibility of full attribute elemental stones appearing is almost zero. Therefore, it is not surprising that cultivators here will use single attribute spiritual stones to drive their formation. Chapter 10. Mirage Beetle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Double restraint. Gao Xingyu saw the mystery behind it and was really curious. If both the external and internal breathing formation were set up by the nameless cultivator who turned into flying ash, then there may be hidden wonders of heaven and earth inside. Due to the lack of aggressiveness and only serving as a shield, the convergence breath formation is one of the few formations that can be naturally stacked, with an effect of 1 + 1 being greater than 2. After stacking two low-level convergence arrays, disks, their convergence effect will not be inferior to that of a mid-level convergence array. Looking at the surrounding environment and the position shrouded by the restrained breath array, Gao Xingyu had a conjecture in his heart. He walked forward, carefully pressed against the light film and felt it for a while, then calmed down and gritted his teeth before diving in. Sure enough, as soon as Gao Xingyu entered the breath-gathering formation, he discovered what he had in mind. At a rock groove not far in front of him, there were a few drops of milky white liquid emitting a faint fragrance and waves. Indeed, it is a timeless stalactite. The 10,000-year stone bell milk is a rare object in heaven and earth, not related to vitality, but produced by the rhythm of the earth's veins. That is to say, as long as there is an earth vein, it is possible to have a stone stalactite that lasts for 10,000 years. This object is called 10,000-year stone stalactite, and the 10,000 year in it is just an imaginary number. The time when a drop of 10,000-year stone stalactite forms is determined by the strength and activity of the veins it is located in. It is not uncommon for a complete 10,000-year-old stalactite to form over hundreds or even millions of years. Zuxing has abundant vitality and abundant cultivation resources, so there is not much development and utilization of the 10,000-year stone bell milk. However, according to the introduction on the jade slips, the 10,000-year stone bell milk is extremely popular in areas with low vitality content, especially those alchemists who often add 10,000-year stone bell milk when refining high-level and complex medicinal pills. In fact, they are using the characteristic of using the stone stalactites of 10,000 years to ignore their vitality and neutralize various attributes through their own fluctuations. This is also the first time that Gao Xingyu has seen the stalactite with his own eyes, which is exactly the same as the description on the jade slip. The 10,000-year stone bell milk is a rare object in heaven and earth, with the attribute of earth, but it does not belong to the 5 elements. No wonder Wang Jinxiong, who possesses the earth attribute, was so frightened that he dared not enter after feeling the fluctuations. This is a natural level suppression. Qijin was right in front of him, while Gao Xingyu gave a bitter smile before retreating from the restrained breathing array. He sat cross-legged, his mind spinning rapidly, recalling some knowledge about the eternal stalactites. 10,000-year stone stalactites do not belong to the 5 elements, so they cannot be stored in 5 elements vessels. And its efficacy will gradually decline after leaving the veins, so it is not suitable for long-term storage. Yuan magnet, ice crystal jade, crying blood crystal, and the gastric sac of the void spider. Gao Xingyu shook his head as he recalled. Although these materials are relatively niche, they can still be purchased on Zuxing. Gao Xingyu is not short of money, even if he cannot buy it, he can still get it through exchange. But now that he has drifted to a different world and cannot even open his storage ring, what can he do? Gao Xingyu bowed to the place where the nameless cultivator was sitting and silently recited the reincarnation scriptures 3 times in his heart. The nameless cultivator has turned into flying ash and is walking clean. As the saying goes, dust returns to dust, soil returns to soil, there is no need for Gao Xingyu to handle it separately. Gao Xingyu reached out and took the 3 relics of the nameless cultivator over. Let's forget about the storage bag for now. Gao Xingyu couldn't even open his own storage ring, and when faced with someone else's storage bag, he could only sigh with joy. At this moment, what Gao Xingyu most wanted to see was the jade slip. Although the style and material were different from those of Zuxing's jade slip, they all went the same way. Since this jade slip was placed by an unknown cultivator in front of him, it is very likely that it was his dying wish. Although Gao Xingyu's perception of the sea is damaged, there is still no problem reading jade slips. He doesn't need to release his divine sense, he just puts the jade slip on his forehead and can read the inner tube normally. As expected, the jade slips contain the last words of this cultivator. This pre-Qin cultivator named Huang Yanzi is a small sect cultivator who practices 9 levels of qi. He came to the Qinling Mountains to collect herbs, while also searching for opportunities and preparing to build foundations. He is practicing the earth attribute technique and is very sensitive to the fluctuations of the 10,000-year stone bell milk. He felt strange while picking herbs, and it took him a lot of effort to cross the mountain and come here. 10,000-year stone stalactites are still very beneficial to Huang Yanzi, but when he first came, he was also like Gao Xingyu now, facing such a strange thing but had no way to start. So Huang Yanzi blocked the fluctuations of the 10,000-year stone clock milk with the contained breath array he carried with him, and sealed the passage he had opened with a giant stone. Then, he left Kaya Ridge and went outside to find a solution. 10 years later, Huang Yanzi returned to Kaya Ridge. At this point, he already had a very good solution. He not only found a prescription that uses 10,000-year-old stalactites as the main material to refine enhanced quenching pills, but also ordered a low-level magic tool, the Dan Furnace Huiyun Ding, and gathered relevant auxiliary medicinal materials. Huang Yanzi enthusiastically returned to Kaya Ridge. After confirming that no one had noticed the passage, Yu went down to the stone cave and set up a low-level breathing array outside to ensure that he was not detected by the outside world when refining pills on site. Huang Yanzi is also a bitter ha. With all his wealth added up, he can't even afford an alchemy furnace that doesn't use the 5 elements material. However, Huang Yanzi has some ideas. He asked the alchemist to add a few elemental magnets and add a material conversion array when making the Huiyun Ding. He plans to place the Huiyun Ding next to the 10,000-year stone bell milk and use the waves emitted by the 10,000-year stone bell milk to transform the material of the Huiyun Ding. Material conversion is just a metaphor. A low-level alchemy furnace made by mixing common materials such as purple cloud copper, red flame sand, silver essence, and Tiangang jade with a small amount of elemental magnets. If one wants to transform it into an elemental magnetic alchemy furnace that transcends the 5 elements, even if it takes 1 million years, there is still no possibility. But Huang Yanzi's idea is not a problem. He doesn't really want to harvest a yuan magnetic elixir, he wants to use the neutralization characteristics of the 10,000-year stone stalactites to adapt the Huiyun Ding to this fluctuation, so as to facilitate subsequent refining work. Huang Yanzi plans to place the Huiyun Ding next to the 10,000-year stone bell milk for 3 to 5 years to meet his requirements. Therefore, after setting up the external restraint array, he placed the fire cloud cauldron and began to practice with his eyes closed. Huang Yanzi never expected that there was still a mirage beetle hiding not far from him in the breath-gathering formation. This burrowing beetle crawled out of the ground in pursuit of the scent of the eternal stalactites, even earlier than Huang Yanzi's second arrival, and did not pass through the passage he had opened. The burrowing beetle does not intend to absorb the eternal stalactites, but rather to use fluctuations for self-cultivation. Therefore, after entering the cave, it only lies quietly next to it, practicing without touching the surrounding environment.